So the brother asked, he said, from the etiquettes of a student of knowledge that he's read is that they should stand for their teachers. You should stand for your teachers, right? But usually if it's like a class or a lecture or something like that, um, you know, they don't stand for the teacher when they arrive. Because like, logistically, it's like, you know, everyone's getting up and then like they have to sit back down, shuffle everything, you know what I'm saying? Whereas like other types of gatherings that aren't necessarily like straight classes, they would stand for them, whether it's like a, you know, like a majlis or like, you know, um, like a lunch or just something like that. Yeah. Okay. Should we start? It starts with agenda change of conditional one. Or we had the Salihin first. Okay. يقرأ العربية ولا إنجليزي؟ من يقرأ الإنجليزي؟ أحد الطلاب. من؟ إسماعيل. Okay. عفوا في ماء. 65. Yeah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه يوم الدين. نويت تعلم التعليم وتذكر التذكير والنفع الانتفاع والإفادة الاستفادة والحث التمسك بكتاب الله سنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم والدعاء للهدى والدلال الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته قرب وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. عاد ذكرى من كتب اكتب أبدا العبيد من دهر داهرين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من أن أضل أو أضل أو أزل أو أزل أو أظلم أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل علي. اللهم أغننا بالعلم وزينا بالحلم وأكرمنا بالتقوى وجملنا بالعافية يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين. So we are picking up where you all left off in the book Riyadh al-Salihin, also known in English as The Gardens of the Righteous. And this book is extremely important. So important. I'm almost 100% sure that anywhere you go in the Muslim world, they'll love this book, right? You'll never find someone ever having anything bad to say about this book or the author of this book, which is really a miracle, because how many people, scholars, great scholars, have been spoken ill about, even just once in their lifetime or after they passed away by someone, Imam Nawawi. Everyone loves him, mashallah. Everyone loves him and respects him. So he wrote this book, right? Did you guys read the introduction with Sheikh Yahya? So he said in the book, tamam. He talks about why he wrote it. تمام. قال فرأيت أن أجمع مختصرا من الأحاديث الصحيحة. تمام. That I saw it necessary, تمام, or I thought it was good to compile a short book of sound hadith. تمام. مشتملا على ما يكون طريقا لصاحبه إلى الآخرة. That encompasses or includes everything for the person who reads it or has it, for them to like lay for them a path to paradise. تمام. ومحسن لآدابه الباطن والظاهرة. That includes etiquettes for the Muslim to follow inwardly and outwardly. تمام. جامعا للترغيب والترهيب. That also includes hadith that encourage you and hadith that, you know, like chastises you to stay away from certain bad things. تمام. وسائر أنواع آداب السالكين. Also including the various different types of etiquettes that a seeker of the path to Allah Ta'ala, تمام, would need. من hadith الزهد, hadith relating to asceticism or leaving the dunya, ورياضات النفوس, and exercising or disciplining your soul, your nafs, وتهذيب الأخلاق, and refining your character, وطهارات القلوب وعلاجها, and purifying your heart and diagnosing and treating its ailments, تمام, وصيانة الجوارح, تمام, and protecting your limbs, وإزالة إعوجاجها, so you protect your limbs and you remove any. He uses the word i'wijaj, which means like to be askew, like, you know, if something's bent or crooked, right? So to remove any crookedness in your limbs, meaning to make them stop doing bad things. تمام. وغير ذلك من مقاصد العارفين, and other things from amongst the intentions of the knowers of Allah Ta'ala. That's why he wrote this book. tamam? And it's just, look, it's so short. It's not even that long, right? And those are the things you get if you read and practice what's in this book, right? So it's a book of tasawwuf, really, right? It's a book of hadith, meaning that he includes, he's listing hadith, right? But he wrote it as a path or manual for someone to seek the path to Allah Ta'ala, tamam? So he's unique, and no, he's very unique in that, you know, his if someone were to wonder, where are his works of tasawwuf, right? Because he was a really great knower of Allah Ta'ala. They say actually that he was young when he passed away. He was quite young. I believe he was in his 40s. They say he received the mantle of Qutbiyya, the highest level of wilaya, and his state with Allah was so strong, it literally killed him. It literally killed him, right? So that's the man who wrote this book, right? The man who wrote this book, and this is how he describes the path to Allah to anyone who's interested, right? To anyone who's interested, through speech of the Prophet ﷺ, arranged in a certain manner with titles and short descriptions. تمام. وأرجو إن تم هذا الكتاب, and I hope that if this book is finished, أن يكون سائقا للمعتني به إلى الخيرات, that it guides one, the person who's concerned with it, to good things. حاجزا له عن أنواع القبائح والمهلكات, that it prevents him from all different types of ugly things and things that will destroy him. تمام. And he ends with dua. تمام. He ends the rest of the introduction with dua, a beautiful dua. So this is a really important book. You guys aren't just reading hadith for the sake of reading hadith. There's a reason this book was chosen. It's a book that is very profound, right? And the chapter we are reading from, we're finishing the chapter of what? Of al-muraqaba, right? To be aware that Allah is watching you, right? Which is one of the levels of ihsan, right? From the hadith of Jibreel where the Prophet ﷺ was asked, what is ihsan? What did he say? He said what? To worship Allah as if you can see Him, or at least you know He sees you. So this is one of the levels, the ways of reaching ihsan, to be conscious that Allah is watching you, seeing and hearing everything you do. طيب. So he's on hadith number 6, السادس, تمام, in this chapter. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن ثلاثة من بني إسرائيل أبرص وأقرع وأعمى أراد الله أن يبتليهم فبعث إليهم ملكا فأتى الأبرص فقال أي شيء أحب إليك قال لون حسن وجلد حسن ويذهب عني هذا الذي قد قدرني الناس فمسحه فذهب عنه قدره وأعطي لونا حسنا قال فأي المال أحب إليك قال الإبل أو قال البقر شك الراوي فأعطي ناقة عشراء فقال بارك الله لك فيها فأتى الأقرع فقال أي شيء أحب إليك قال شعر حسن ويذهب عني هذا الذي قدرني الناس فمسحه فذهب عنه وأعطي شعرا حسنا قال فأي المال أحب إليك قال البقر فأعطي بقرة حاملا وقال بارك الله لك فيها فأتى الأعمى فقال أي شيء أحب إليك قال أن يرد الله إلي بصري فأبصر الناس فمسحه فرد الله عليه بصره قال فأي المال أحب إليك قال الغنم فأعطي شاة والدا فأنتج هذان وولد هذا فكان لهذا واد من الإبل ولهذا واد من البقر ولهذا واد من الغنم ثم إنه أتى الأبرص في صورته وهيئته فقال رجل مسكين قد انقطعت بي الحبال في سفري فلا بلاغ لي اليوم إلا بالله ثم بك أسألك بالذي أعطاك اللون الحسن والجلد الحسن والمال بعيرا أتبلغ به في سفري فقال الحقوق كثيرة فقال كأني أعرفك ألم تكن أبرص يقدرك الناس فقيرا فأعطاك الله فقال إنما ورثت هذا المال كابرا عن كابر فقال إن كنت كاذبا في دعواك فسيرك الله إلى ما كنت وأتى الأقرع في صورته وهيئته فقال له مثل ما قال لهذا ورد عليه مثل ما رد هذا فقال إن كنت كاذبا فسيرك الله إلى ما كنت وأتى الأعمى في صورته وهيئته فقال رجل مسكين وابن سبيل انقطعت بي الحبال في سفري فلا بلاغ لي اليوم إلا بالله ثم بك أسألك بالذي رد عليك بصرك شاة أتبلغ بها في سفري فقال قد كنت أعمى فرد الله إلي بصري فخذ ما شئت ودع ما شئت فوالله ما أجهدك اليوم بشيء أخذته لله عز وجل فقال أمسك مالك فإنما ابتليتم فقد رضي الله عنك وسخط على صاحبيك متفق عليه. It's the sound hadith according to Imam Bukhari and Muslim. والناقة العشراء بضم العين وفتح الشين هي الحامل وقوله لا أجحدك معناه لا أشق عليك في رد شيء تأخذه أو تطلبه من مالي. Read.
Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates that he heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, Allah decided to test 3 people from the Bani Israel, a leper, a bald person, and a blind person.
You guys know what a leper is? Leprosy is a skin disease. It used to be very widespread back in the day. It's a skin disease. It causes people's skin to be a certain way. And then people who were afflicted with leprosy were usually shunned. They were usually shunned because it was contagious, right? It was contagious, and it's like if you receive it, like most skin diseases that spread all across your skin, people don't like to be around someone who has that. Like maybe they would react negatively or something like that. So lepers back in the day were usually outcasts of society. 1, because of the fear of their sickness, and 2, because of any sort of disfigurement they received from their disease.
So he sent an angel to
a leper, a bald person or hairless person, and a blind person. Okay?
So he sent an angel to them. The angel went to the leper and asked, "What would you like the most?" He replied, a beautiful complexion, lovely skin, and that this disease, due to which people have an aversion for me, be removed from me. The angel passed his hand over the man, and his disease disappeared, and he was given a beautiful complexion. The angel asked him, "What type of wealth do you like most?" He replied, "Camels," or he said, "Cattle." So he was given a pregnant she-camel. The angel then said, "May Allah bless you in this." The angel then went to the bald man and asked, What would you like most?" He replied, "Beautiful hair, and that is the disease, and that this disease, due to which people have an aversion for me, be removed from me." The angel passed his hand over the man, and his disease disappeared, and he was given beautiful hair. The angel asked him, "What type of wealth do you like most?" He replied, "Cattle." So he was given a pregnant cow. The angel then said, "May Allah bless you in this." The angel then went to the blind man and asked, "What would you like most?" He replied, "That Allah Azza wa Jal returns my sight so that I may see people." The angel passed his hand over the man, and Allah Azza wa Jal returned his sight to him. The angel asked him, "What type of wealth do you like most?" He replied, "Sheep." So he was given a pregnant sheep. The animals of all gave birth and multiplied in number. The first had a valley full of camels, the second a valley full of cattle, and the third a valley full of sheep. The angel then went to the leper in the form of appearance of a leper and said, "I am a poor man. My means of travel have been destroyed. Today I have no means of reaching my destination except through the help of Allah Azza wa Jal and by your assistance. I ask you for a single camel in the name of the one who gave you a beautiful complexion, lovely skin, and plenty of wealth, so that I may complete my journey." The leper replied, "I have many commitments." The angel said, "I seem to know you. Were you not a leper who people regarded as low? Were you not a poor man and Allah gave you wealth?" He replied, "I inherited this wealth from my forefathers." The angel said, "May Allah return you as you were if you are a liar." The angel then went to the bald man in the form and appearance of a bald man and said the same thing which he had said to the leper. The bald man gave the same reply. So the angel said, "May Allah return you as you were if you are a liar." The angel then went to the blind man in the form and appearance of a blind man and said, "I am a poor man on a journey, and my means of travel have been destroyed. I have no means of reaching my destination except through the help of Allah Azza wa Jal and by your assistance. I ask you for a single sheep in the name of the one who returned your sight to you, so that I may complete my journey." The blind man replied, "I was a blind person, and Allah Azza wa Jal returned my sight to me. You may take what you like and leave what you like. By Allah, I will not rebuke you for anything which you take in the name of Allah." The angel said, "You may keep your wealth. You are tested. Allah is pleased with you and angry with your 2 companions." Bukhari, Muslim.
Tamam. So the story is quite clear, right? Three people were afflicted with different things. Allah Ta'ala sent an angel to test them. He cured them of their ailments that they had, and He gave them all wealth, right? And then when the angel came back in a form that was downtrodden and in need, and he came to each individual asking for help, what did they do, right? They attributed their success, right, and their wealth to whom? To themselves, right? To themselves. First, the leper attributed success and his wealth to himself, and then the bald person as well did the same thing, right? Except it was only the last person, it was only the last individual, the person who was blind, who responded accordingly, who recognized that he was once in the position of the person, right? He was once in the position of the person who's asking, someone who's poor, who's downtrodden, who's outcast, right? And he gave him. He said, take as much as you want. So how does this tie into the chapter? It being muraqabah, right? Remembering that Allah sees and hears everything you do, is that those first two people, how they reacted to the angel, I mean, who are they playing, right? Maybe the person who came to ask, right, the poor person, wouldn't have known that they're lying, right? But Allah would know they're lying, right? Allah would know they're lying. And it was a person, the third person, who admitted to what he had, okay, who admitted to what he had been in the past. Someone who was downtrodden, poor, in need. And he paid it forward by helping someone who was once in someone who he was once in the shoes of, right? Allah rewarded him from that, and he passed the test. So the story is clear, and the morals are clear, and that is what? First of all, any success you have in this world, right? Whether it's something you had a hand in receiving, like wealth, right? Someone went and worked for it, or something you receive in this world, what you didn't have a hand in receiving, like your height, or your complexion, right? Your beauty, right? There was no survey done while you were in the womb asking you how you want to be born, right? Anything you received in terms of, like natural beauty or your physique or something like that, or talents, those are things Allah gave you. Some things you might have outwardly put some work into to receive, like your wealth, your education, you studied hard, right? In either case, your success should be attributed to Allah Ta'ala, and you shouldn't attribute it to yourself. You should attribute it to Allah Ta'ala and not to yourself. Because how many people work hard and might not get anything? And how many people don't work hard and get a lot? So it's all from Allah Ta'ala. To attribute it from Allah to Allah Ta'ala, and to recognize that you are once in a position of need, of complete need, a position that other people were once in. If those people come to you, help them out. All right, help them out. All right, help them out. تمام. كم يقرأ غالبا؟ 20 minutes. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Is there a significance to why the first two asked for camels and the third one asked for sheep? Is there a significance?
It's probably just a personal thing, right? The first one asked for camels, the other ones asked for sheep. Camels obviously they're more expensive, right, than sheep. Like camels are very expensive, and they're hard to take care of. Like it's a much bigger animal. The benefit it provides someone is far greater than a sheep. A sheep, maybe some wool, right, some meat if you slaughter it, or some milk, okay? You can't ride a sheep, right? You can ride a camel, so the utility of a camel is more. So it's a higher form of wealth, right? But it's a personal thing, because he asked the person, right? He asked the person, what's the most beloved wealth to you? And he said camel. What's interesting to note, though, is that the first person, okay, he had perhaps, we don't know this for sure, but perhaps the worst condition of the three, right? Because he had leprosy, like it's a degenerative disease, right? It gets worse over time. And he asked for the loftiest of forms of wealth, a camel. Whereas the other ones, they asked for lesser forms of wealth, even though, and their condition was also like, you can say like baldness or like blindness, you can still get by with those things, Wallahu alam. It's a preference thing, as it looks like. Okay? Tamam. It's an actual story. He says, verily there are 3 people from Bani Israel. Yeah, it's an actual story. This actually occurred. It's part of history, yani. And you wouldn't have known it except for the Prophet ﷺ telling you. There's a story they narrate as well in some of the books of tasawwuf when it comes to things like muraqabah, right? That a woman was once married to a man, a very stingy man, right? And one day someone knocked on their door, right, asking for food. Okay, like someone knocked on the door and they're like, who is it? And the person behind the door said, oh, poor person asking for food. The husband didn't even open the door. The wife was like, maybe you should open the door or something. He's like, no, tell him to go away, right? So the poor guy went away, right? Time passed. The couple split up. Woman got remarried. She's with her new husband, right? She's with her new husband, right? And they're about to have dinner, and someone knocks on the door, and he's like, who is it? Poor person asking for food. And the husband said, go give him our dinner, right? So they give him his dinner. She opens the door to give him the dinner, and she's surprised. Who's the beggar? Her ex-husband, right? The beggar's her ex-husband. She comes back and she sits, and she recounts the story to her current husband. Look, this is what happened. Look, Ajib, like my ex-husband was under the door, right? And then he looks at her, and he tells her, and the beggar he told to go away all those years ago, that was me. Yeah. So this is how the world works, right? This is how the world works. If you're not thankful for your blessings, right, and you don't use them in the way Allah wants you to, they'll be taken away. Okay, should we read the next book? We'll stop there, yeah? أقرأنا كله. Okay, read from where you guys left off last time regarding.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. From Agenda to Change Our Condition, by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Imam Zaid Shakir. Regarding homosexual acts, these are condemned by sacred law and are. He said, read from where it left off, right?
Did you guys read that with Ustad Amjad? Read it. It's okay. Read it.
Regarding homosexual acts, these are condemned by sacred law and are considered enormities that require repentance. If Muslims are tried with such impulses, they are obliged to struggle with themselves and avoid being in situations that can lead to temptation or compromise. A person engaged in such an effort should see it as a form of spiritual struggle for which he or she will receive a great reward in the hereafter and spiritual elevation in this world. Many peoples throughout history have abstained entirely from sexual relations, and it is certainly within human capacity for those with unsavory desires to refrain from them for the sake of their Lord and Sustainer. As for masturbation, opinions vary from prohibition to permissibility, but all are in agreement that it is not a dignified practice. If one is engaged in its practice, one should commit to stopping. If someone is single and has overwhelming sexual impulses that are obstructing his or her well-being, marriage is an obligation. If, for whatever reasons, marriage is not an option and the fear of committing fornication is great, then masturbation is better than fornication. Imam Ahmad considers it akin to medical cupping, which removes blocked fluids but stipulates that it not be habitual or involve any lustful fantasizing.
Do you guys know what cupping is? Hijama. Let's talk about hijama. Yeah, keep going.
One should also guard one's nakedness and avoid any display of what is prohibited for others to see. This means Muslim women should make a strong commitment to covering themselves accordingly, and men should also dress modestly. Both men and women should avoid wearing tight-fitting or revealing clothing. Again, do this exercise like the others and maintain vigilance. Sexual appetite is one of Satan's greatest weapons. If someone has committed a grave wrong, or he or she needs to make sincere repentance and commit to never doing it again. If that wrong involves compromising the right of another person, he or she should restore that right if possible.
MashaAllah. So he's talking about guarding oneself, guarding one's private parts. And he mentions, he's talking about two primarily two major sins, right? Two big sins. The first one being homosexual acts, right? And this is something that Islam holds to be forbidden. And as he mentions in the book, that someone who is afflicted with this, it is a trial from Allah Ta'ala, in that they should make an effort to not engage in whatever it is they are feeling, and see it as a way of being elevated to Allah Ta'ala. Being elevated, just as anyone who's afflicted with anything, tamam, sees their affliction, right, and their struggle as a means of elevation to Allah Ta'ala. As a means of elevation to Allah Ta'ala. It's important to note that in Islam, there is only one form of intimacy that is permissible. And that is intimacy between a husband and a wife. In an Islamic marriage, a proper marriage, right? And even then, the forms of intimacy they can participate in between each other is not anything. Even then, it's confined, right? So anyone, right, who wants to participate in any form of intimacy beyond that, beyond the type of beyond what's permissible, then they have to know that it's impermissible, whether it's with a man or a woman or otherwise. All right, or otherwise. Tamam. Okay? Then he talks about another thing that's a sin, masturbation. He says, as for masturbation, opinions vary from prohibition to permissibility, but all are in agreement that it is not a dignified practice. So when he says here, right, opinions vary from prohibition to permissibility. What we've memorized is that when it comes to this, the scholars all say it's prohibited. The ones who say it's permissible in a situation where if one doesn't do it, they would perform zina, which is a greater sin. So when he says here the opinions range from permissibility to prohibition, he doesn't mean complete permissibility, right? He means permissibility in a specific context. If someone weren't to do it, they would fall into sin. They would fall into zina, which is a greater sin. Okay, which is a greater sin. All right? So, now, but all in agreement that is not a dignified practice. Tamam. This is something that is important for you guys to know in terms of how to engage with the community, tamam, in the world we live in nowadays. We live in a world nowadays where people are overstimulated. They're far too stimulated, right? There are things that you see, the magazines on the counter, at the cashier, the drugstore, on your way out. There are things on those magazines on the front cover that would be considered pornography, several years ago, right? So the world we live in now is a world of overstimulation, right? Overstimulation. This overstimulation leads to problems, right? It leads to problems. Just like how if someone was in an environment where they're fueling their passions and their desires with things that are impermissible, naturally the thoughts that will come into their mind, right, are going to be what? Impermissible ones. And they'll have urges to do things that are impermissible. So consumption of impermissible things leads people wanting to do impermissible things. In fact, Imam Ghazali says that if someone has difficulty getting married, if someone has difficulty, right, like controlling their passions, right, their desires, then they should guard their eyes. They should guard their eyes, because what you consume through your senses have an influence on your heart, right? So not just fasting. Fasting weakens your body, right? Fasting weakens your body, and it weakens the physical desire your body has. But if someone's fasting, but they're still consuming things that are impermissible with their eyes, right? Or listening to things that stir that part of their desires, right? Or being around people who do that, that's not going to help them. Fasting is not going to help them. So it's about, for example, fasting, weakening your body, but also controlling what you consume. Controlling what you consume, tamam? Controlling what you consume is extremely important. The person who consumes halal, whether it's through food or what they see or what they hear, their thoughts and actions will all be what? Permissible, right? But the person who consumes haram, right? Who consumes haram, their thoughts and their actions will be naturally what? Impermissible, right? Right? You are what you eat, right? You are what you consume. You are what you consume. And these are topics that, perhaps we might be shy about talking about, but they're important to know because one, you have to know it in this time and era to keep your religion straight and to help others. And you guys are preparing to go out into the world and help others, inshallah. And as they say as well, there's no shyness in deen, as long as it's done in a way that is tasteful and with the proper etiquette. So controlling your consumption of what you see and what you listen to is a very important step to not falling into this trap. Okay, not falling into this trap. Secondly, there's a really good paper you guys should read by Sheikh Hamza. It's called Climbing Mount Purgatorio, I think it's called. Essentially, too much free time leads people to do bad things. That's the summary of it. Too much free time leads people to do bad things, right? Imam Shafi'i, the great Imam, he spent a large portion of time with the Sufis, people of Tasawwuf. And he said, after spending time with them, he said that he learned from the Sufis two things. Tamam? He learned from the Sufis two things. Tamam? First one is, right, that your time is like a sword. If you don't cut with it, it will cut you. What does that mean? That means that your time is a tool. Either you use it to get things done, or it will eventually cut you. What does that mean? Your lifespan will end, right? You've run out of time, okay? The second thing he said was that your nafs or your ego, if you don't busy it, it will busy you. Meaning what? Meaning your nafs is like a child, okay? Nafs, imagine it as a child living inside your heart, screaming and wailing and wants things, right? Okay? Now you have to busy that child, or else it will just naturally drag you to that which is impermissible. The nafs, its natural appetites incline towards, tamam, the impermissible, right? So the nafs wants to eat, right? It wants to drink. It wants to sleep. It wants to be intimate, right? It wants to just kick it and relax. All these things naturally take someone to the impermissible. Why? Because when you want to eat and you want to eat and you want to eat, what do you have to do? You have to find food, right? That food, if you want to quench yourself, satiate yourself, might be permissible or not permissible. The income you receive might be permissible or not permissible. At a certain point, you just have to feed and feed and feed and feed, right? Intimacy, again, like we just described earlier, all forms of intimacy are haram except for what? Between yourself and your spouse, right? In certain ways, right? What about like relaxation, right? Even relaxation takes you to haram. You have to pray 5 times a day. That prayer involves you getting up, covering yourself properly, making wudu. At times where you don't want to get up, like Fajr, right? Or Isha, if the days are really long, right? So even its desire for relaxation can take you to haram. So the nafs's natural inclinations are always going to be towards the impermissible. So if you don't busy the nafs, it will busy you, right? It will busy you with what is going to naturally take you to the haram. All right, that's the nafs. That's the nafs. So like a child, if you were to leave a child, right, what would it eventually do? It would harm itself, wouldn't it? It would either, it doesn't know how to help itself, how to feed itself. It would if you left it in this room by itself, maybe it'll knock something over and harm himself, put its finger in an outlet, do something crazy. So a child is like that, right? Just like your nafs. So if you have to busy it with something good, or else it'll what? It'll busy you with what it wants, which is usually going to be bad. So a lot of the problems we have nowadays in the community with these kind of people having appetites that are being satiated in impermissible means is because they have too much free time, right? People don't have anything better to do, right? We live in a world now where subhanAllah, it used to be, to cook for food, right? If you wanted to get food, go out, buy fresh ingredients, come back, cook it, right? All right, there wasn't no hot pockets you buy, you just put them in the microwave, right? You had to make the dough, okay? You had to make the whatever, and it was food. You have to spend a whole day making food, just a meal, okay? Washing your clothes takes some time. Slowly we move to what? Technology helps us, right? There's some of the food's already prepared. Your clothes are washed really easily, right? Nowadays, it's gone even beyond that. Nowadays, you can you spend your entire day on the couch, right? And you can buy lunch, buy dinner, have it delivered to your door, buy products, right? Have it delivered to your door. Even some people, their work is from their couch, isn't it? Their whole day, you can literally spend it on your couch, not even moving, and everything just comes. So because of that, what happens? A lot of free time, a lot of energy that you have as a human being that's not being used properly. So it's being directed to what? It's going to pull you to. It's going to pull you to that which is haram, right? Which in this time and place, because of what people consume, it's usually deviancy in this way. Deviancy in this way. Okay? And he talks about as well guarding one's nakedness and avoiding wearing clothing that is impermissible to wear, dressing modestly, avoiding tight clothing, revealing clothing. This goes for men and women, right? This goes for men and women, right? How many men, unfortunately, wear clothes that are too short? And I don't just mean like, your pant legs are too short. I mean even your shirt is too short. You pray in it, right? And subhanAllah, everyone behind you wishes they weren't behind you, right? Everyone behind you wishes they weren't behind you, right? So, like, dressing appropriately is extremely important. As a Muslim, your dress, the way you dress, it should be clear from the way you dress that you are Muslim, right? For the ladies, right, if they wear hijab, khalas, that's clear, right? But for the men as well, it should be clear from the way you dress that you're a Muslim. Don't be that guy, right? You're walking with your wife, and she's, mashallah, wearing like hijab and abaya, and you're wearing like a jersey and shorts, It's inappropriate, like the people of Allah Ta'ala, all right, the people of Allah Ta'ala, the men of Allah Ta'ala, you wouldn't even see their arms. Think about every single traditional Muslim culture, their traditional garments, right? The male garments. How many of them are short-sleeved? How many of them are just like shirts that don't extend down to their knees, covering their backsides? No one can think of a single one. Either they're going to be long all the way to their ankles, for example, or they're going to be like to their knees, right? But the point is they're long enough where they cover their backsides, cover part of their thighs at least, right? And they're going to be long-sleeved. And they're going to have something to cover their head, right or wrong, right? So that's how a Muslim man dresses, right? That is how a Muslim man is supposed to dress. Make sure your limbs are covered. Make sure your head is covered. Make sure your dress, your shirt, your top is long enough where if you pray, right, parts of your body, even if your skin is not exposed, even if your skin, your backside isn't exposed when you pray, wear something long enough where your features won't get outlined for the person behind you, right? So it's important that every single person, whether they're men or women, dress appropriately. Dress in a way that if you were to pray right now, you can pray a prayer that you're proud of. That's how you should dress all the time. In a way that if you were to be told to pray right then and there, you'd be proud of that prayer. You'd be proud of whoever saw you praying in that garment, you wouldn't be embarrassed in it, right? Because you're Muslim, right? You're Muslim and your whole life is one of worship. So dress as if you're always in worship. Dress as if you're always in worship, okay? Tamam.
Exercise 7, guarding the hands. The Blessed Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "The Muslim is one from whose tongue and hands other Muslims are safe." This means guarding the hands against stealing from or harming any part of Allah's creation without just cause. According to the Quran, the hands will bear witness against the children of Adam. Hands are one of the greatest of Allah's gifts and distinguish us from other animals because we not only have an opposable thumb, but a dexterous hand that enables us to manufacture things literally, make with hands. We should never raise our hands to anyone, Muslim or non-Muslim, unless in self-defense or a legitimate struggle for the defense of a country. If living in a Muslim country, one may fight only when a jihad is declared by legitimate state authority and does not involve any vigilantism, which is prohibited by consensus. Even in war, Muslims are prohibited from assaulting or killing women, children, old people, and non-combatants. Furthermore, we should certainly not use our hands to sow any corruption in the earth. Shaking hands with someone of the opposite sex is generally regarded as prohibited based upon the verse which commands us to lower the gaze, as touch is more arousing than sight. And certain sound hadith warn specifically against shaking hands with members of the opposite sex. Some scholars, however, interpreted those to mean when attraction is present, but these are weak opinions. It is a problem in Western lands, as Muslim men are often seen as misogynistic, and their refusal to shake a woman's hand, innocently offered in friendship or in a professional capacity, can strengthen this perception. Orthodox Jews are also prohibited from shaking hands with members of the opposite sex and adhere strictly to that practice even in the United States. If one resolves not If one resolves not to shake hands, it is important to explain the reason to those present who might misconstrue the act as an insult. This is a problem even some of the great scholars of this time grapple with.
So now he's talking about guarding your hands, right? The next to the 7 limbs that require guarding. He says guarding your hands. The Prophet says in the Hadith, the Muslim is one from whose tongue and hands other Muslims are safe. Tamam. The Hadith is, Al-Muslimu man sallama al-muslimina bilisanihi wa yadihi. Tamam. The Muslim is the one whose tongue and hands other Muslims are safe from. Meaning, they don't speak ill about other Muslims, and they don't oppress Muslims with their hands, right? They don't oppress Muslims with their hands. This means, tamam, stealing, because you steal with your hands, right? You take. And so not to steal, number one, so people's property are always safe from you, okay? Your character should be one such that people's property, tamam, people always regard their property safe around you, tamam? The Prophet ﷺ was considered al-amin, right? It's absolutely incredible. He was hated by people of Quraysh for what he was doing, and yet they trusted him so much, they gave him they would tell him to hold on to their wealth. Can you imagine how trustworthy someone must be that you hate them so much? Perhaps you want to assassinate them, but you trust them with your wealth. It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. But that's the kind of man he was, and that was how people reacted to him. So having people trust you to that regard, where they feel their wealth is safe around you. And also, not harming any of Allah's creation without just cause. Notice he says not harming any part of Allah's creation without just cause. Allah's creation is everything, including yourself, right? So, not harming any part of Allah's creation without just cause. Even a blade of grass, not harming it. All right? We are all guests in Allah's dominion. Everything you see, you hear, you experience in the world belongs to Allah. We are guests in His dominion, right? Just like how, for example, someone walks into Maqasid, they're a guest at Maqasid. If you saw them come and start plucking out fibers from the carpet, what would you say, right? He said, oh, don't worry about it. It's just a couple of fibers from the carpet. Well, it's not your carpet, right? Do that at your place. Don't do it here, all right? Well, similarly, someone who really understands what's going on in the world understands what? Even possession, like this is my cup, that's your clothes, right? Yeah, in a worldly sense, but ultimately everything belongs to Allah, right? So you are a guest in His dominion. How would you behave in the home of the person who's hosting you? Someone who hosts you in their house, gives you food, gives you drink, gives you shelter, gives you everything, and you didn't ask, and he didn't have to, you know? Picture yourself like that man in the hadith we just read, right? You're someone homeless, without a penny to your name, knocking on someone's door, can you take me in for the night? And they're like, come on in. They don't have to say yes, right? They can tell you, go to the shelter, right? Go find a bridge, right? Go beg, right? Go work hard like I did, for example, right? But the person lets you in, right? They let you into their house. They give you a place to sleep. They give you some clothes. They let you take a shower, right? They let you warm up. They give you a meal, right? After all that, right? Now imagine that person, right, who was let in, that poor person who was let in and given all this by the host, right? Imagine they look at one of their family members inappropriately, looks at his daughter inappropriately, looks at his wife inappropriately, right? This person who gave everything for the sake of this individual who was in need without asking for anything in return. He was not obligated to, right? And then this person, he compensates him for his generosity with what? Transgressing the boundaries that are known for a host and a guest, right? He looks at his family inappropriately. He ruins some of his house. He goes where he's not, somewhere in the house where he's not permitted to go. What would you say about this person? Are they a good guest? Have they shown, have they reacted appropriately to the generosity their host has shown them? No, this is someone who, right, they deserve to be punished, right? Any person in their right mind would say, this person, right, he needs a what? He needs to be told what he's doing is wrong. He needs to be told, right, that this is not how you're supposed to behave in the house of someone who hosted you like this, right? Everyone would look at that. Any single person in humanity would look at that person and say, you've done something wrong. right? How dare you behave this way to someone who hosts you like this? So what about you're hosted in Allah's dominion? Okay, He didn't have to create you, but He did. So He let you in the house, right? He didn't have to feed you, but He did. He didn't have to clothe you, but He did. He didn't have to, quench your thirst, but He did. He didn't have to give you, a level of luxury in your life, but He did. He didn't have to give you family or friends, but He did, right? All these things He gave, and He gave, and He gave, and He gave. So we're in His dominion. How should we respond, right? Don't harm a single creation of Allah Ta'ala, because you're in His house, right? Everything is His. Even that blade of grass, even that, like the birds you guys see, right? All that is Allah's, right? So bothering any of Allah's creation, right? It's enough to understanding that they're Allah's, right? Is enough to stop you from doing anything bad to them. If you understand that relationship, it's enough to stop you. Just like how if there's someone you really love, and you find out that this person, right? There's someone you love, for example, so-and-so. And then some person comes and bothers you, and they're this to you, and they're that to you, right? And they're mean to you, right? But then you want to respond, but you find out, oh, that's his son. The person I love, that's his son, or his cousin, or that's his great, I don't know, like some distant relative, right? Okay, khalas. I'm gonna let it go because of that relationship with who? The person I love. So similarly, understanding the world in that context. Everything is Allah's, right? The one who created all of us, the one who we should love. And so everything that we see, we shouldn't harm it because it's Allah's creation. Okay? Like, without just cause, there's sometimes you just have to, right? You just have to, do things in the world, okay? If someone's life is in danger, obviously, by some animal or something like that, khalas, defend yourself, right? Defend yourself. You're given that permission. According to the Quran, right? He says, the hands will bear witness against the children of Adam. Hands are one of the greatest of Allah's gifts and distinguish us from other animals because we not only have an opposable thumb, but dexterous hands that enable us to manufacture things, literally make with hands. So our hands are unique. They're very capable, right? They're very capable. And so be conscious of what you do with your hands because your hands will articulate what you did with them in the next life. We should never raise our hands to anyone, Muslim or non-Muslim, unless in self-defense or a legitimate struggle for the defense of a country. If living in a Muslim country, one may fight only when a jihad is declared by legitimate state authority and does not involve any vigilantism, which is prohibited by consensus. Even in war, Muslims are prohibited from assaulting or killing women, children, old people, and non-combatants. Furthermore, we should certainly not use our hands to sow any corruption in the earth. The Prophet ﷺ never hit anyone. The Prophet ﷺ never hit anyone. No one in his house, right? No one who served him, none of his companions, no one, okay? He never raised a hand to anyone, okay? He never raised a hand to anyone. Tamam. So, firstly, most scenarios where someone can imagine raising a hand to someone, right, or haram, right? You have no right to hit anyone except in certain instances, okay? Certain instances. And even those instances where you become allowed to raise your hand to someone, right, to hit them. The Prophet ﷺ in his life never hit anyone. So even the higher road would be in those cases, not to hit them. Not to hit them. Okay? That's a day-to-day life. Okay? In terms of martial struggle, like he said, right? Martial affairs are left to the state, right? And sound martial or legitimate martial struggles, it comes down to the state. And, all right, in our context, we're not living in a Muslim country. Okay? So he says here, tamam, vigilantism is also prohibited. Okay? So someone who would decide to take the law into their own hands, all right? Also prohibited, right? Also prohibited. Okay? Executing the law, taking it into your own hands by punishing someone is prohibited. It's not allowed, right? It's not allowed. We're not, we're not judge, jury, and executioner, okay? We're just Muslims who live together, want good for each other, and the most we can do is advise one another, okay? The most we can do is advise one another and make dua for each other, okay? We're not in any place where we can, execute certain things that are left for states and courts and judges to execute amongst ourselves. Tamam. Furthermore, we should certainly not use our hands to sow any corruption on the face of the earth. The earth, tamam, we should definitely not sow any corruption on the face of the earth. The worst of corruption being what? Being disbelief in Allah Ta'ala, right? Disbelief in Allah Ta'ala and the Messenger of God. But any other form of corruption, which is like spreading vices, spreading sin, all these things are not something a Muslim should participate in. Tamam. Then he talks about shaking hands. He says, shaking hands with someone of the opposite sex is generally regarded as prohibited, based on the verse which commands us to lower the gaze, as touch is more arousing than sight. And certain sound hadith warn specifically against shaking hands with members of the opposite sex. Some scholars have interpreted those to mean when attraction is present, but these are weak opinions. The Prophet ﷺ, he never shook the hand of a non-mahram. He never shook the hand of a non-mahram. Okay? Sometimes, if you're reading hadith and seerah, you'll come across instances where, for example, he's visiting a woman, or, like there's some sort of interaction between him or her. If you do the research, you'll find out that woman is actually his mahram. Either like, an aunt, or, like a sibling via nursing, but there's some sort of relationship, right, that made her his mahram. Okay, that made her his mahram. But he never shook the hand of a non-mahram. He mentions that the general position of the scholars, right, almost all scholars hold the position that it is haram, all right, to shake the hand of a non-mahram. Okay, some scholars, like Hanafi school, holds the opinion that if it's in the case of an elderly woman, right, a man can shake the hand of an elderly woman if there's no desire involved. Okay, but a general like ruling that you can shake someone's hand as long as there's no desire, like he said, those are weak opinions. Okay, those are weak opinions. All right. Now, it is a bit difficult in the U.S. or in the West in general, and even in the Muslim world nowadays, people are shaking everyone's hand, right? It can be a bit difficult to maneuver this, but Allah helps the person who's sincere, right, and works hard. Okay, so if you, for example, okay, if you find yourself in a situation where you could be like potentially shaking someone's hand, right? Before you go into it, like, make sincere dua, okay, and make it like a noble intention, and then go into it, and inshallah, with some style and with some smoothness, you'll be all right. Okay, don't be like, don't be brash. Like, oh, I'm not gonna shake your hand. Like, don't say that. All right, that's not according to Sunnah. Like the Prophet ﷺ was someone who was very tasteful and had noble character during all moments of his life. So don't be brash. Just be like, elegant, be regal, right? And explain yourself, and people will get the point. Right? People will get the point. Okay? Now, and I'll tell you right now, right? How you dress contributes to your aura, right? To the aura, you sort of like, people feel a certain way around you depending on how you dress, okay? So, all right, if you dress a certain way, most people won't even come to shake your hand. They'll greet you, but they probably won't shake your hand, okay? Because of, how you present yourself, right? But still, some taste in how you interact and how you explain yourself goes a long way, all right? It goes a long way. Tamam? Are there any questions? Yes.
I don't think like anytime I've like rejected another non-Muslim woman's handshake, like they always understood as long as you explain it. Well, I'm done with my questions. Like they always understood.
Yeah.
Whenever I told them like, oh, I'm Muslim, so I can't shake your hand. Like,
Definitely.
oh,
yeah. If you're just if you're well mannered and you're polite and you do it with like in a way that's appropriate, people will understand, right? And definitely if the person's Muslim, they better understand. Like they should understand, like if you come from a family that's been Muslim for generations, okay, and the other person gets upset, let's say for example a cousin or like someone in your family's again Muslim for generations, right? And they get upset, why you're not shaking your hand? You should be upset at them. Like, why don't you understand that I'm not shaking your hand? Like, you've been Muslim for eons, Like, strange, Tfaddal.
So in genetic exchange or condition, it says if one is engaged in this practice, or in terms of masturbation, if one is engaged in this practice, one should commit to stopping it. If someone is single and has overwhelming sexual impulses that are obstructing his or her well-being, marriage is an obligation. What does it mean by obstructing his or her well-being?
As in, if they are, as in, it is making them fall into sin. Well-being here is spiritual well-being. So if someone's falling into sin because of these desires, and they have to get married, so they have a permissible outlet for it. Yes.
Sheikh, so especially you have brought up the like when you're like visiting like family, like cousins or something, like non-mahrams, like within the family, and sometimes what happens is, especially like coming back from Al-Maqasid, you come back like from learning, and they'll think like some people will say like if they see you doing something that they haven't done or seen before, and they see it as like too strict, they'll be like, oh, this guy, like he's becoming extreme now, like what's wrong with him, right? It's like how should we approach the deen without having people like assume that someone's going too far in it?
You explain to them, look, this is Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and practicing his Sunnah, especially on the matters that are agreed upon, is not extremism, right? It's not extremism. Some people will tell you, well, praying 5 times a day, like this person's extreme. No, like, that's not extreme. That's being Muslim. That's part of being Muslim, that you have to pray 5 times a day. Now that doesn't mean we look down on someone, right, who doesn't do it, right? But we educate them, like, no, this is not extremism. This is actually what's expected, right? Extremism, right, would be something like, okay, like even your mahrams, you don't touch them. That's like extreme. Like you close the door to what's permissible. Okay? Unnecessary, right? But just doing what's expected is not extremism. And just education. Education goes a long way. Education doesn't necessarily mean like, all right, we're going to have like a family meeting and we're going to go over these rulings together. No, just like through like, just introducing the idea to them stylistically in a way that they can absorb it is the best approach. Yeah. Tfadl.
So a couple years back, I was visiting Egypt. I hadn't visited since I was like 2 years old. So, I knew that these people were my family members.
Right.
I didn't really know what they were to me.
Okay.
So, like in that situation, do you like ask them like, "Are you my aunt?" Like, do you ask them?
You said you were 2 years old?
No. A couple years back, I visited, but I hadn't visited in like
Since you were 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it. Just use your judgment, man. Yeah, just use your judgment, right? And it's every circumstance is different, but just use your judgment and avoiding if you're skeptical, if they're a mahram or not, it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't hurt. Yeah. Tfadal.
I wanted to ask regarding, for example, let's say we pick up something that we learned because we want to implement it into our lives to follow the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as a sunnah, or as like a fard that we implement because we were doing something wrong. And other, like I think they give the example, like other family members start to see that, or anybody starts to see that. Like, if you were to explain it, how do you do it without being like, because sometimes you can be like, I'm doing this because the Prophet ﷺ did it, and like, I'm Muslim, and they're Muslim too, but they start maybe feel like a friend that's like, oh, I'm Muslim too, like without belittling them or making like making it like making them seem like the other, like, but also explaining like this is something that Muslims should do, but like the majority of people don't do it, so it's like, but this is what we really should do, and yeah.
Okay. Do you guys all get this question? You guys all understand it? Let me give you a scenario. All right. You go out to eat with someone. Okay. And you are someone who strives to eat healthy. As everyone should, right? Your buddy who's with you, they are the complete opposite. Right? You go out to eat and you get like a well-balanced meal, right? Right? And he's getting like, like he's got like, I don't know, whatever is unhealthy, I don't know, like what? Well, I'm not familiar with restaurants. Let's go grocery shopping together, okay? You go grocery shopping with him, right? And you get like, a mixture of vegetables and fruits and, like things that are healthy. And then, this guy has his cart and he's just got like, he doesn't even go for the like, outside aisles because all the healthy stuff's on the outside, right? The produce, the fruit, the eggs and he goes straight in the middle. Boom. Like, he's got his golden grams. He's got like, like Doritos, M&Ms. And it's like, it's Halloween or something, right? So he's got that's his cart. Okay, and he looks at you and he's like, why do you eat like that, right? How would you respond in a way that makes him understand you're doing what's good for you, right? And it's normal. You're gonna express it to him that it's good for you and it's normal to eat like this. In fact, you don't want to say this to him, but he'll come to realize what he's doing is not normal, right? How would you do it? You get the point? Yeah. You guys all get the point? Yeah. So there's no one right way to do it, right? But that's essentially it, right? You want them to understand this is how Muslims are supposed to behave in a way that's like normal, isn't brash, doesn't make them feel bad about themselves. Like, I don't shake hands at Sunnah. Okay, let's move on, Okay, Muslims don't shake hands. Oh, okay. Like, and then next thing you know, eventually they might do it. They might also practice that. Yeah. Yes.
So like I come from a community where it's like it's a norm. Like for instance, if you're in a situation where you're around other people and like for instance, a woman comes up to try to shake your hand.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm Muslim, I don't shake hands.
Yeah.
But she goes to the dude that's right next to you that's also Muslim and shakes his hands.
Yeah, yeah.
And then start looking at you crazy. Like,
that's the struggle, isn't it? Right?
Like how do you how do you balance between like holding yourself to a standard, but also like helping your brother understand like this is a standard in which we should be held to, like that we should hold ourselves to.
I think if the person who's confused why you're not shaking hands, if you just let them see, look, there's different levels of practice, right? Everyone can do whatever they want, right? But I'm choosing to practice it in this way because our Prophet ﷺ practiced this way, right? And just leave it at that. You know what I mean? And then like preaching, the thing with preaching is that a lot of times it falls on deaf ears, But just making people know, like, look, there's a level of practice, and this is how our Prophet ﷺ practiced it. He didn't shake other women's hands. He's Muslim. Yeah, he's Muslim. He's my friend, great guy. He's choosing to be like that, just like how, for example, he's buying cabbage and celery. This guy's buying, whatever it was he was buying, that junk food, right? People are free to do what they want, But we do know is what is sunnah and what's not. Okay? We just clarify that. Yeah. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. What would be the best way to explain to non-mahram family members that are not Muslim on like why I couldn't be, hugging them or shaking their hands, especially like younger cousins that have now, grown up, or non-mahram uncles now that I've become older, and also taking this context is so strange to them that you can't, that you could eventually marry or because they're not Muslim. Yeah. So like, how do you go about that?
I think presentation is important. Is a key role in this, right? So, for example, from the start, like like if you meet someone and you want to greet them and you're not going to shake their hand or give them a hug or something like that, right? A lot of times, people like put their hand on their chest or they give a short bow, or something like that, right? There's some sort of thing they do to like, to show that they acknowledge and greet the person without shaking hand. So like, the distance you keep from them physically and like, like the mannerisms you put into the presentation, a lot of times people get the picture, right? A lot of times. Now, in cases when they don't and being persistent, I think just explaining to them should work, right? It should work. And surprisingly, people understand if you present it in a proper way. I think people understand, and you just tell them, look, it's not about like love or anything like that, right? It's just about like who I can and can't touch, you know, who I can and can't touch. You know what I mean? And maybe in the beginning, all right, it'll be a bit difficult, but people get used to things over time. You know, there are plenty of people, right, who it's not even about being mahram or not. They just don't want to be touched, right? Even by like their own parents, like don't touch me, like don't hug me, don't, you know what I mean? People are like that, right? And people accommodate them, right? Their loved ones accommodate them, you know? And so here likewise, they can accommodate this sort of thing as well. Keep in mind as well, and I'll mention this as well to help those people who are perhaps in difficult circumstances, that when they say shaking hands, they mean like skin to skin contact, okay? Skin to skin contact. So if you shake hands or you know, or like greet through cloth, it doesn't fall under the impermissibility. So for example, like let's say, you know, you just happen to, oh, look, what's this? My hand's covered by the shawl, you know, shaking hands. It's not impermissible, okay? Or like, like someone told me once a story, right? That they went to greet their like one of their in-laws. I think he said it was like his wife's aunt, right? Who's not his mahram. His wife's aunt is definitely not his mahram, right? So he went to greet his wife's aunt, and she's like an older woman, right? And she was Muslim, but she wasn't, necessarily practicing this part of the sunnah. She just didn't know. Point is, he sees her after not seeing her for a long time. She just throws herself in his arms, right? Like a big hug, because like khalas, like she's old and she sees him as like like a part of the family and stuff like that, right? But in that case, he's obviously not held liable, right? He wasn't the one who asked for her to hug him, and she just did it in the khalas, and the good thing in his case, he said, was that he was clothed and she was clothed, so there was no skin to skin contact. So obviously in that case, like he's not held accountable for what she did, right? And she's an old woman, and so khalas, you let bygones be bygones, right? Yeah. Yeah, his hand up first. Tfaddal.
Sheikh, you mentioned the whole idea of like wearing the right clothes.
Sorry, to interrupt you. If you're Hanafi and you're attending the fiqh class, you can go downstairs and attend. Do you want to end the stream so you can go downstairs? Okay. Yeah, if anyone else wants to go to the fiqh class downstairs, you're free to do so. Tfaddal.
So you mentioned before that you can wear the right clothes to give yourself a sort of aura that people wouldn't, really, I guess, reach their hand out to you in any way like that. But is there other things we can do to don that same aura while still being, I guess, lighthearted? Like you're not like totally serious all the time, but people still have that respect for you.
I mean, honestly, just follow the sunnah, and the sunnah gives you a level of regality. The sunnah gives you a level of regality. People who follow the sunnah in their dress and in their behavior, subhanAllah, like when you look at them, it genuinely looks like you're looking at royalty. You know what I mean? The way they hold themselves, the way they present themselves, the way they move is very graceful. Like when I went to visit Zanzibar once, right? And in Zanzibar, there's a lot of tourism from European countries and the West and stuff like that. And people, they dress inappropriately, right? It's a beach, like a coastal, like there's beaches and stuff like that. But then the locals, everyone's Muslim. Like Zanzibars are all Muslim, right? And they all dress very, very all the ladies dress, mashallah, like I never saw a Zanzibar woman on the streets outside her house except that she was wearing like cover her hair, and she was wearing an abaya, right? And the way they carried themselves, like they look like compared to people who are dressed inappropriately, like queens. Even the way they move, like the way these are people who follow the sunnah, and you can just see, subhanAllah, like a big difference between them and the other people. So just following the sunnah gives someone like some sort of people perceive them differently. Okay? Yes.
Sheikh, I just wanted to ask, so in terms of non-mahrams, is there a point where they can be old enough, like they're really old, so then the not touching them goes away, or is it any age
Yeah, so we just mentioned that it's if it's an older woman and there's no desire.
So I guess, but then I guess I'm asking like how old? Like what is it like a number? Or
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. An old woman, right? Like we're talking like, you know, like 70s, okay? Like an old woman, all right? Okay? Anything else? Khalas? Okay. Yes.
If the fuqaha differed on like the style in which one caused it to exit, if that would like change its the ruling, if it was done like by hand or just thinking or like different means.
I have to look it up. I don't remember the top of my head. Yeah, is that it? There's a Rawha on Wednesday. So there is no class on Wednesday, right? At all, right? Yeah, there was, but now there's not, right? Yeah, there's no class on Wednesday, inshallah. That includes, no Rawha and no evening fiqh classes. So you guys have all of Wednesday off, inshallah. Okay? All right? So enjoy your, the break. Those of you who wanted to travel, who need to travel for, seeing family and stuff, you have an extra day to take care of your business. All right? All right? Okay. Hamza's really happy. He's going to Jersey, right? He's leaving Tuesday at 3:45. You're on the road. Yeah. All right. There's no class on Wednesday. It's a holiday. Holiday, like vacation, right? Okay. All right. Is that it? So I'm the Fatiha Tawfiq and to benefit knowledge, to practice and accept his actions from us, to spread all over the world, makes the Prophet happy with us. Words our teacher, Shaykh al-Nawas, wa hadrat al-Nabi.